Hello everyone, we are in the main menu for Pure Chess. We're going to go to Chess Challenges at the top right hand corner of your screen. We're selecting bonus games and we're doing the set mate and 5. We're going to tackle prop number 14 today. And if you'd like, go ahead and hit pause on your screen and take a minute to analyze, and after that we'll start up. Okay, I trust you had some time to look this over, and I'm going to try to break this down as best I can. We're going to start out with black. Black has a queen on f2, rook on f7, and a king on f8. King only has for flight squares, there's 2 flight squares that are blocked by our rook. The rook basically blocks e7, e8. The king has a flight square of g8 and g7. Black also has a bishop in position on b7 square and a couple of pawns here. Okay, so what do we have as white? Well, first off, we have this h5 pawn that blocks. Well, it only covers really one square right here. We have this rook on e5, and it's actually blocking 2 of the king's flight squares. We have a queen on d2, and we have a bishop on c2. Now we have to be careful because black's queen can eventually get us to check if we're not careful. We could now a lot of times what we'll look at is we'll see black's queen. We'll say, okay, we'll take it. But if we take the queen, that trade-off makes it impossible to solve this problem. So we have to be a little more creative than that. What is the best move we can make with this queen? Pretty much the only move we could have to narrow black's choices down is to move the queen to d8 check, and that would force black's king to go to its only flight square, which would be g7, because there's no defenders for that. So we're going to play queen d8 check, and that's going to force the king to move to the g7 square. Now, okay, we made a move, but we got to figure out how to get mate in 4, and that's what makes this one really tricky. Our next move has got to be something that makes the king move and narrow down its flight squares. So let's look at the flight squares first off. The g6 flight square is blocked by the pawn on h5. This let's see, these flight squares are blocked by the queen, so we've got f6 blocked. We've got pretty much every single flight square blocked except for this h7 square. Or actually, we have the h7 square blocked too. I forgot. So we've got everything. h7 is blocked by the bishop here. So every flight square is blocked. So we got to figure out how do we trap this king and get checkmate, because the only problem is we can't really use this bishop. We can, but we can't, because the queen would have a discovered check on us. So if you look at the queen's possible moves, nothing looks really good here. So let's take a look at the rook's possible moves on e5. And what we'd like to do is mess up this, change the king's flight squares. So what we want to do is limit it. So one move we can do is to sacrifice a rook by taking g5 check. Okay, and black recaptures with the pawn right here. Now, keep in mind we have these flight square. Let's see, f5, g6, h6 blocked by the bishop. What we'd like to do is get our queen involved somewhere over here. We can't get our queen over here right now because the king could just capture it. If there's a, there's a piece defending each one of these squares. So what we need to do is move the king. We need to get the king to move. But we've only got really two pieces to do it. We got the queen. We could take g5, but that wouldn't help us narrow it down. So what we need to do is we need to get that king to move. So the only way I see here is to pawn sack, advance the pawn forward, check. Now, if you remember the king's flight squares, this one's blocked by the queen. These ones are blocked by the queen. If we put the king in check by moving the pawn to h6, these two are blocked by the bishop. The only thing the king can do is take the pawn. And that is really, really good for us because now we can move the queen to h8 check. And the only flight black doesn't have any flight squares. And the reason black doesn't have any flight squares is because this pawn right here on g5 is its own piece is blocking the flight squares. Now black's gonna obviously blocked with the rook, but we've got our bishop on c2 protecting that. So all we need to do is go king takes h7. It'll be checkmate because everything's blocked. And of course we solve the problem. And that wraps this up. This was a little bit of a tricky one, but I hope this helped out. I'm signing out. Thank you for watching.